Hello everyone and welcome to a special Christmas episode of Blue Tengu's Game Development Show. There'll be plenty of game making to follow, but first, as always, things are going to get very weird. Merry Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a game dev was stirring, not even the QA guy. The lines were coded, commented with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would do the work instead. Bob the programmer was nestled all snug in his bed, while nightmares of object-oriented programming danced in his head. And Dottie in her rage, and I in my 100 yen cap, had just settled our fight for a long winter's vacation. The French call it Mourvedre, the Australians and Californians may call it Mataro, but the Spanish call it Monastrell.
Get back
which
to
is
work.
What do you mean, get back to work? I'm doing your Christmas special, Grim. Oh, this is pretty special.
That's not a Christmas book.
Yeah, I know, I'm reading from a book on wine. It's called
Let's
Atmosphere.
chat more game dev.
Alright. I'll do some game dev, even though it's Christmas. But not for you. For the good people out there watching this. So let's see. I have to do some game dev on Christmas, which means I should do something Christmassy. Unfortunately, my game is about cowboys and guns. I can't go shooting Santa. Well, I guess unless he shoots first. But Snowmen are fair game, so I think that's where I'll start. Let's see. This is a special episode. Not doing this one live. This is just for YouTube. What's different from the live episodes is that I'm going to try to do something different with this and go all the way from the planning stages to the end of the level. Obviously, I can't make a complete game from scratch in just a short amount of time. But I want to give like a preview to those of you out there who've been interested in the show but don't want to follow for 2 hours a week or something. Just want to kind of compress it into a format. If I can figure out how to get things to fast forward and do all that stuff, maybe do a little editing work. Something I can't do every week because of lack of time, but because it's Christmas, let's see if I can pull it off. Hopefully this will be interesting to you guys out there who haven't been following the show, or if this is your first episode of the show. Welcome to a very weird place to start. So let's get started. Usually I go over to my task list, my to-do list over at Trello.com and start, figuring out which tasks I need to do this episode and etc. So if you want to see the live game dev show, you can see old episodes on YouTube or come on over to Twitch TV. But this episode's a little different. So I'm going to start with planning. So I am going to go over to Trello, but it's going to be an empty list for today's episode while I plan it out. So let me jump to my desktop, which is much less Christmassy than what I had, and head on over to Project Spaghetti's Trello site. For those of you who don't know, I keep basically all my to-do stuff here on Trello.com under Project Spaghetti. If you search for Trello.com, or if you search for Trello and Project Spaghetti, you can find this list. I've done, at least up through the Christmas episode, I've done 25 episodes so far, plus I think an intro episode, but that's only on YouTube. And every week I go through this. Episode 26 is for next time. Just did that this morning. Let's see. So for the Christmas episode, I do want to do Snowmen as opposed to shooting Santa, which would be very unfestive. But to do that, I need to do a little bit of planning first. Kind of thought about this in advance, but the planning process usually is about drawing a few things out, seeing how it might work. The thing I haven't done so far in the Project Spaghetti Cowboy game is to have an enemy that splits apart when the enemy, when the cowboy shoots them. Snowmen would be perfect for this because most snowmen, well, if you live in most places, snowmen tend to have, if I can make circles that are somewhat balanced, they tend to have three parts. Here in Japan, for some reason, the snowmen have two, but I'm not going to worry about the Japanese version, even though I'm in Japan. I am going to do three, mainly for gameplay reasons. What I'm thinking is, what I could do with this is have, right now, the game is all about a cowboy, top-down 2D cowboy shooter, where the bullets fired bounce around with a pinball mechanic. And so far most of the enemies are enemies that can block and shield and do sorts of stuff like that, but one hit and they're dead. The snowman's going to be a little different in that it's going to depend on where the bullet hits. What I'm thinking is change up the AI a little bit, kind of throw the player off their game. If the bullet hits the head, then, take off the head part, change the AI for the remaining 2 bits, and speed it up a little bit. What I'm thinking is, so that the player doesn't get too confused with too many patterns, what I'm thinking, let me just save all these for posterity. What I'm thinking is start off with 3. There I go with my circles again. Start off with 3, and depending on what the player hits, like if the player hits the head, then I've got this body part, and if the player hits one of those again, then it kind of evolves out into these other body parts, so that there's kind of this tree. And I think the normal snowman, in general, this one's going to be slow. If it's got 2 body parts, it's going to be medium. And if it's just got 1 body part, it's going to be fast. Now, I think what's going to make sense to a player is if the snowman has a head, horrible carrot nose there. If the snowman has a head, then it knows where the player is, and it's going to try to seek out the player. If it doesn't have a head, then it's just going to go randomly about. The speed will still change, but whether it's actively seeking the player out or whether it's just kind of wandering around, that's going to be varied up depending on, how many body parts it has left. This is going to be an interesting thing to implement because I have to do all the steps that I do usually over the course of a month to make a new level, for example, in 1 episode. So this is going to be rather compressed, but I will explain what I'm doing as I go along, maybe fast forward through some parts where it's just me pixel drawing and stuff like that. So let's do some tasks here. To be able to do this, obviously the first thing I need is the basic sprites. I've been working with rough sprites so far, so I'm not going to worry about brushed up sprites or anything like that. That'd be probably too much for you guys anyway, so you've got things to do on Christmas, right? So I'm going to need a left-right facing 3 version, so that's 1. I'm going to need the 2 and then the 1. Then I'm also going to need a version without the head. And let's see, the other possibilities are blow out the middle section so it has the head and the bottom but no hands. Let's see, so there's the head, the middle, the head, the bottom and the middle. So there's 3 different variations of that medium one. And then the fast one, there's 3 variations of that too. So all in all, that's 7 new sprites that I have to make for the snowman. So let's put that in the task list. First thing is snowman, enemy, rough sprites. And hopefully a snowman shouldn't be too hard to draw. So, but there are quite a few sprites that need to be done. So let's go comfortable with it. Half an hour. We'll see if my Photoshop skills are up to it, especially late at night on Christmas here. The next thing is I always have a background, so I need to have a background. That shouldn't actually take that long because it's snow. Snow looks like snow. Shouldn't be too hard. It'll be just a rough background, of course. So let's see, Christmas stage. Background. Rough. And that again is a graphics task, so I'll set that to that. Let's see, once I have those, do I need anything else? I don't think the snowman's going to do much except for melee attacks, which means it's going to run at the player and try to attack them, which if you've seen, the game dev show would be kind of like the ghosts or scorpion enemies. So there's not a whole lot to do with that. I do have to add the enemy into Game Maker Studio, which is the program I use to make Project Spaghetti, the game. So add object. And let's see, probably the trickier thing, let's see, snowman, determine where the bullet hit, because there's those 3 chunks. So I have to know which of those 3 chunks the bullet hit for me to figure out which snowman to produce. Let's see, what else do I need to do? I do need to separate the AI based on that state. There's 2 ways I could go about this. I could create, let's see, the 7 variations of snowman as different objects and just switch to a different object when I need to. Or I could try to store it all in the same object and just divide up, what sprites it has to be using. I suspect since the logic is pretty much the same except for just what target the snowman's going after, I'll just stick it all into one, and then if I need to, I'll split it out later. But that's going to be a little tricky, so let's see. AI branching. That just means if it's got a head, search out the player. I should just say Merry Christmas every time I flub a line. Flub my speech. Let's see. Snowman. What else would the snowman need to do? There's the branching. I guess there's the state. Update. I think that's pretty good for now. Usually I have weeks between episodes to think about all the little bits that I'm missing as they come up, but this is all one episode. So let's see what I can do with this. If I need to add tasks later, I will do that. But for now, let's jump right into it. First thing is going to be doing the snowman enemy and then the Christmas stage in that order. So let's see, Project Spaghetti, let's pick all these different enemies that I have in here. I'm going to try to pick something that's going to be relatively close to a snowman shape so that I have something to work with. The closest thing I can think of, the aliens nowhere close. Obviously cowboys are nowhere close, scorpions nowhere close. The ghost is probably my best bet. So I'm going to edit that in Photoshop. And I'm not going to worry about, sprite direction and stuff like that, because that's a whole lot of extra work. Just want to get it working in time for Christmas. So I don't need an angry ghost. I can get rid of that. But before I do anything, let me save this as a different file. So no ghost, snowman. Do a snowman there. I can get rid of this guy. And I can up the opacity because it's not transparent. And in general, I've mentioned it in past episodes for those of you who've been following the show, but I like to try to stick to the same general collision shapes so that enemies more or less behave the same in the game, which means I'm probably going to have my snowman more or less take this shape. Color-wise, Ghost isn't that far off from a snowman, so it's just a matter of getting those circles in there, just to give me a rough guide. Okay. And let's fill this guy out. Try to round him off. I'm definitely not going to pull a Rankin and Bass off in here and get the snowman from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but let's see what I can pull off. One thing I should let you know, if this is your first time watching this, is that I'm using the Commodore 64 palette because the game itself is kind of an homage to my favorite game system of all time, the Commodore 64. So I want to kind of use that palette and stick to it, which is why the color scheme is pretty limited and the pixel is pretty rough. That's intentional. My bad drawing skills are not intentional, but let's see, what's an easy way to do this? You know what? I'll bet there's an easy way. Instead of just trying to draw pixels, what I can do is, I don't want the brush, I want the pencil. What I can do is maybe this. That's not too bad. Maybe 8. There we go. That's pretty much exactly what I need. So let's do that. And let's duplicate the layer. Get rid of everything. I should do this like I've done other sprites in the past. Go all the way back to the ghost here. Well, let me go all the way back, but that's good enough. Gonna do a new layer, and I'm just gonna call this 3 balls. Thankfully, these names don't show up in the actual game itself. And I'm going to hide that one a little bit, but keep it as kind of a guide. And go back to my brush here. Oh, whoa, whoa. Need to draw on the right layer. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see, I should probably then make the head a little bit smaller so that this all fits in the right spot. Let's do that. Oop. Keeps wanting to put me back there. That's the head. Make the body 8. That's not too good. Let's do 9. 9. And maybe I should stick with 7. So in terms of parts, that's about right. I do kind of want to thicken that out a little bit, though. So it's not going to be a perfect circle. I do want to fatten it out. So let's fatten this part out first. And this part out. And maybe I'll keep the head where it is for now. Add just a little bit of extra bulk there. A little bit of extra bulk there. And there. And do the same thing here. So that it's starting to look a little more like a snowman. By the way, the reason I'm using all black is because it's nice to get a silhouette before filling in details. I think that's more or less what I want for the shape. Make sure I have it all nice and balanced there. Okay. Now let's make it look a little less like a Rorschach test. Bleh. And let's get it to look a little more like a snowman. So to do that, I should actually bring in my Commodore 64 palette here. And use that as my base. For filling in that. At least once I have the basic sprite, it shouldn't be too bad to separate it out into the other ones, because they're more or less the same. They're just going to be kind of cut bits and pieces of this. Boom. Okay. Okay, well, that's a basic outline. I guess I could fatten the head out a little bit more. Its neck is a little too thin for my taste, so I will do that. Now it looks a little too rockety, but the head's too tall anyway, so I'll bring that down a bit. Shave off the extra pixels. Okay, that's not too bad for an overall shape of a snowman. Could probably fatten it out even more. Let's see if it lets me do that. Without messing it up, please. Okay. So So fattened out the snowman. Now it's time to get it looking like it has a face. So boom, boom. Got the eyes. Got some buttons in the middle. I guess that's going to be one problem with having the snowman look like this, is there is no middle. So I should probably fix that if I can. I fatten it up a little bit there. Okay, now I've got a middle to work with, which is nice. Very, very basic snowman going on here. Not going to win me any artist awards. Let's give him a little carrot nose. Oh, rather big carrot nose, I guess. That's a little too big. Okay, what else would I need to do with this guy? I need to give him some sort of arms. Since arms are made out of branches, keep those brown. Let's have it coming out like this. Okay. And just to give the player kind of a hint where these things are going to separate, let's just use the lightest gray possible and do a little bit of a neckline here and a little bit of a shadow. Okay, and I don't need this guide anymore. So there's my snowman. I could probably fatten out the bottom a little bit. Have that coming out a little more, as the base should be more solid than the top. There we go. That looks about right. Okay, so now I'm going to take 3 balls here, make them into 2 balls head. Oh, these names are really bad. Oh, these are not going to get into the final game. Let's see, 3 balls. So 2 balls head is going to be, well, let's not. It's Christmas. Let's keep this family friendly. Let's go head, torso. Because torsos are more family friendly. Let's see. So to keep this simple, let's go head, torso, base. So this version is just going to be the head and the torso, which means obviously the first thing I can do is just get rid of this down here. And fill in those gaps. And bring it down a bit so that it's at the bottom. Feels like there's something hanging off here. Let's get rid of those pixels. Okay, hanging off the bottom. Yep, so it looks about right. It loses its head. The next thing I'm going to do is, let's do torso base, since that'll be easier. Good old torso base. Okay, so I can just get rid of the head on this one. Probably the easiest way to do that's going to be to do this. And get rid of the head and all the extraneous stuff that's hanging off. And I guess I do need to fatten that out a little bit, don't I? And I don't need the shadow anymore, so I can get rid of that. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, I guess I should bring it down to keep the balance going. So let's do that. Bring that down. And there we go. Okay, so there's my torso base. This one's still on the ground, so I don't need to worry about shifting it around any. The last one's going to be head and base. So let's take this as the base, head, base, and get rid of that. So now I need to remove this middle chunk. To be honest, since these chunks are supposed to be about the same, I could probably just get rid of the arms on this, but just in case, I'll do it the proper way. Since he's not going to have arms, I'll get rid of those, and then I'll get rid of the middle segment and bring the head down. So let's do that. I guess I need to copy and paste a bit. Do I? Yeah, I guess I do. Okay, let's bring that guy down. It's not too bad. Kind of fits into place there. And let me just make sure these are roughly the same size. Not that one, this one. No, I kind of like the shape of that one better. Yeah, I kind of like the shape of this one better. Don't need those anymore. Let's get rid of these extra pixels. So I guess I will use this one. Let's get rid of the head base thing. Get rid of that. Use this as the base. And just get rid of the arms. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, there you go. That's the head and base version. Now I need to make the head, the torso, and the base on their own. Probably the base is going to be the easiest one to do. Let's duplicate this, base, bring that up to the top. Okay. It will certainly be the easiest one to do because all I have to do is get rid of all the stuff at the top. Let's do that first. Because I don't have a live audience with me today, I'm kind of nervous that my microphone's going to cut out or it's going to stop recording or something, and I'm going to come crying like 3 hours later when I realize that nothing actually got recorded. So don't mind me if I tend to check the Open Broadcaster software quite a bit, just to make sure things are still going smoothly. So that's the base. I guess I could kind of expand it because the weight's gone, so I could stretch it out a little bit. So let's do that. Bring it up just a bit. Just to kind of indicate that that weight's gone. Because if it gets too small, the player's not going to be able to see it anyway. So that's the base. And I could probably use that more or less as the torso if I copy over the arms. So let's do that. So the arms are basically just kind of cutting out at a diagonal and then doing this like spray thing. So let's do that. If the player has really done a job on the snowman, this is all that's left. And the head should be not too bad to do. Let's copy this one. Now let's copy the original. I guess it doesn't matter. Alright, let's copy this one. Keep it simple. And this is just the head on its own. So I can get rid of all this. grab some of those black pixels. And let's see if I can get away with fattening the head out a little bit. Yeah, there's something still hovering over there, so let me make sure I get rid of all those extra pixels. Just to kind of give it a similar weight to the other body parts. And one other thing I forgot to do is I need to make sure that this snowman conveys to the player that he's not happy that he's getting blasted apart. So when he's just ahead, he's going to look rather upset. When he's a head and a base, he's just going to be rather normal. And when he's like this, he's going to be a little more jolly. If I can pull that off. It cuts it a little too close to the shadow. Let's bring it in a little bit. Okay, and just a hint of a smile. Doesn't need to be a big deal. Obviously, if I had more pixel real estate to deal with, I'd spread out the smile and make it look like proper raisins or whatever, but just need to get across the point here. So I think I have, with that, all the sprites I need. That should be all my combinations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so let's save these out so I can start using them in Game Maker. So, Snowman. Snowman head, torso, base, right, 0, 0. Because in the future maybe I want to add animation and stuff to it, so this is the right-facing version, the very first frame. Just so I can stay consistent. And I get to do that for all of these. This one is no head. This one is no base. Just a head and torso facing right. Okay. This one is just a head and base. This one's just the base. Just the torso. And finally, just the very, very upset head. Okay. So, that should be all I have to do with the snowman, but well, I need to keep this. I do need to save this. I do need, while I'm in Photoshop, I do need to do one more thing, and that's actually draw the background that this game takes place on. To do that, I'm going to use another one as my example. So graphics, backgrounds, what's a good one to use? Maybe the alien one will be easy enough to use. Desert, I'll use the desert one, which is basically just this. And with the desert background, I've got it separated out into layers, which will help me, and to make sure I don't accidentally overwrite it. Again, all rough graphics. So snow background. First thing's going to be to replace this color with just white, but if I replace it with just white, the snowman's not going to stand out very well. So it might be better to go with kind of a bluish color, like the sky, and just think of it as ice. See, this is one of the things that'll happen when you have a very limited palette to work with. But, you know, it's actually not so much the fault of the palette. It is actually a good idea to get things contrasted, so let's bring that snowman in here. So I have something to show. If it lets me copy it over. Copy merged. Paste merged. Okay. Obviously the screen's not going to be that small, but this is what the snowman would look like in the desert. Not for long, obviously he'd melt pretty quickly, but that's what he's going to look like in the desert. Probably, you know, about that size. So if I just turn the desert into just a white background, it becomes pretty hard to see. So let's try this color. That's not too bad. And let's see, what can I do with the dirt? I could just change it to blue, kind of a white blue, or I could change this to white, I suppose. That's not a bad idea. Times like this, I wish I knew a little bit more about what I'm doing with Photoshop. But I think as long as I'm just doing white, I should be able to do this without too much trouble. Oh, I don't want to replace that color. I want to replace the dirt color. So let's grab that. There we go. Replace color. Let's just make it white. Yes. It's going to keep the shading setting, so that's no good. Alright, never mind. I'll just do this the hard way. Let's get rid of the dirt. Bring in the white. And just start going to town on it. Let's see. I do need a new layer for that. Now let's just call it snow. And get to work. Don't want to add too much white because then the snowman will disappear in it again. And let's see. Just to see how this density is working out, let's bring the snowman over here. Yeah, that's still not too bad. I could keep going. And no, you're not going to spend the next 6 hours watching me fill in snow. I'm only going to do it in this section and then start copying and pasting it around, so no worries about that. Hope you guys are all having a great Christmas, by the way. Hope you don't have to work. Hope you do have the holidays off. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you're able to celebrate it with family, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, well, at least I hope you get the day off. And because no matter what the occasion, a day off is always a fun thing to have. Let's see. Make sure that this is okay. That's not bad. Alright, let's copy and paste this around. Yeah, that'll happen if I copy and paste it in the same place. And by keeping these layers separate, I can at least change out the color of this. Like, this color might be a little too bright, so I might tone it down with a lighter blue. instead of this like cyan color. Okay, I think that does it for the edges of the screen. I'll fill in the other ones manually. That's not too bad. I can live with that. Ooh, got a little too sloppy there. Don't want to do that. Make it look like there's a giant snowdrift over there or something. Because if too many of these pixels bunch up, then it's going to be hard to see the snowman, so I don't want to make a mistake like that. Okay, I think I'm more or less at the density I need. Oh, that's no good. Alright. Could do that all day, but let's merge these layers into just one. Call it snow. And let's test out a different color for that background. Let's try this one. Oh, that's much better. Yeah, that's much better. I'll go with that. Because it also gives me a chance to do something different with the sky, too. I do have a canyon going here, so I could just turn that into snow. First order of business is to do that with it. Maybe give it a little bit of an outline. Let's give it a little bit of a blue outline there. Make sure I'm on the right layer. There's a weird brown pixel there. I wonder what layer that's from. Let me just check and see if I can erase it on this one. Yeah, I guess I could. So I'll put the sky back. Alright. Mystery solved. Okay. I think I can just do the line for the rest. What is going on? Okay. Photoshop freaked me out there for a second. I don't really need to do that. That's fine. Okay, so that gives me that. Sky-wise, let's see. Boundary's fine. Whether I want that to be the color of the sky or not, could probably try a gray. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, that's a little more snow, Christmassy, I guess. If I did that, one thing I would want to do is add another layer. And maybe do something like this. If I can get a brush of 4, maybe I could get away with just doing it. Ah, there we go. Kind of a snowflake pattern. let's do that. And because my mouse is shifting all over the place, every snowflake is ending up unique. Okay, let's see how that looks from a distance. That's not too bad. Whether it looks like it's snowing or whether it looks like just a polka dot sweater, kind of hard to tell at this point. I have to see it in game and see what it looks like. But yeah, that's kind of Christmassy. Bringing me in the mood a little bit. Let's make it even more Christmassy. Should probably have a star somewhere. Let's make that even bigger. Let's go with a nice 10. Yeah, it looks more like the sun, I guess. Let's not do a star. But the star does kind of remind me that there's one other thing I do need to do. Graphics-wise, a task I completely forgot. Because this is a pinball shooting game, there are bumpers, and so far in the levels, for example, there have been barrels, there have been tombstones, cacti, crystals, things like that have all served as something the bullet can bounce off of. If it's a Christmas level, probably the easiest thing would be to drop down some presents or Christmas trees. Let's see, let's draw both. So let's add that to the mix. Rough sprite. Thankfully things are easier to draw than people. So let's see, Christmas present, bumper. Whether I use both, whether I use one or the other, just gonna have to wing it, but at the very least I think I can use the present. And maybe the tree could act kind of like the cactus does in the desert level. So let's move that up. Move that up. And add the tasks for adding the bumpers. Christmas tree, bumper. Add object. Christmas present. Bumper. Add object. And I can think about gameplay while I'm adding them. I'm sure something will come to mind. But for now, let's just add that to the task list and jump back to drawing the stuff. I don't need the snowman anymore, so let's get rid of him. Let's save this out. Yeah, I guess I should save the file itself. Good idea. So there's my snow background. So let's take a bumper, an existing bumper, objects. Closest thing to a present. As morbid as this sounds, the closest thing to a present in this game is probably a tombstone. Merry Christmas. Present box. Alright, let's call it present box. Present's enough. Not like I'm going to have other kinds of presents. I don't need rest in peace, unless it's a very bad present. So this gives me my basic shape to work with. And thankfully a bumper only has one layer in general because it doesn't move. Though if, in some cases like the bell in the graveyard stage, it can react. Let's see, the easiest present to stand out is probably going to be green and red. So let's see, let's go with green for the most part. Can be fairly big, I suppose. Fairly big present. And let's cut that back down to just 1 pixel so I can draw properly. So in terms of an outline, that's not too bad. And let's grab that red. Start drawing some bows on it. Ribbon. And let's give it a nice red outline. And let's give it a nice big ribbon on top. No, let's not do that. That should be there. Let's just draw it symmetrical first, and then I can worry about the details. Get rid of some of the extra stuff. And I could probably bring this out a bit, like that. Which would allow me to get rid of some of the stuff in the middle if I wanted to, but let's not do that. That's a fairly big present. Rather gaudy though. That green is kind of, let's change it to purple. It doesn't feel Christmassy enough. See, this is where I wish there was a nice forest green or something in here, because that green's a little too bright. This purple is way too weird. Pink's gonna look very un-Christmassy. That's not too bad. It's not too bad. Not often I get to use pink in this game anyway, so that's an idea. Could also change the present to red and change the ribbon stuff to green. But I think that's what I will do for now. Now let's try green. Let's try green. Just see what it looks like in the game before judging it, right? Okay, so that's my present bumper. Just 1 picture. And now for the tree. Closest thing to a tree I have is probably the cactus. No, actually. Once again, it might actually be the tombstone that's closest to the tree. This is a very morbid Christmas. Let's try this. Tree. I'll just make sure to add Christmas to it. Get rid of the text. No more resting in peace. Now it's time for some goodwill towards men. So this, obviously a tree has to be green, so let's see, what can I get away with? Try to keep the shape as close as possible so that the bumpers kind of behave the same. And add another layer down here. And a final layer down here. Starting to look like a tree. Let's get rid of this stuff up here. If I can get away with it, I would rather fatten it out a little bit. I'm even clicking my mouse to jingle bells. Definitely in a Christmassy mood. Okay, what can I do here? Let's do that. Make this the trunk. Okay, that solves at least the branch problem down here. So I can just fill that in there. Going to need something to divide off these branches. Gray is probably not what I want to use. Maybe yellow would work. We'll see. We'll see how this goes once I fill this in. Boom. And boom. Get rid of that stuff. Okay, that's not too bad. I don't think I need this yellow stuff up at the top, do I? In the end, it's just kind of the shape that's doing it, so don't need the highlights. The shape is keeping it rather Christmassy. I can sharpen it up a little bit here. Okay, it sharpens it up a little bit. I probably do have to tail this trunk in a little bit. And that's not too bad. Okay. Let's do it from there and get rid of these ones down here. Okay, that way everything has kind of the same level to it. To make it look like a Christmas tree, it's going to need ornaments, otherwise it's just a tree. But, you know, in the future, if I do need just a regular tree, maybe I'll need the tree, so let's make the ornaments a separate layer. So I can always undo this stuff. Like any kid's drawing of a Christmas tree, the ornaments are just going to be kind of at the edges here. Seems like the best place for them. And maybe just one here and here to make it feel like it's kind of coming down. Let's add a little something to the top as well. Yeah, that kind of looks like a star. All right. Maybe those ornaments are a little too big. Let's see what happens if I flatten them out. That's not too bad. Okay. Well, I think I've got kind of a tree going. I could probably do a little bit of random scattering with other colors here. And pink. Okay. That's somewhat festive. Blue. What other colors are kind of going to look good on this? I don't know if that's going to work. No, that's not too bad. Okay. I think that's a good start for the Christmas tree. On the background, the yellow should stand out okay. So there's my Christmas tree. It's a rough sprite. It gives me my base. So that should be all I need to do with that stuff. So, you know, if you've seen episodes in the past, you know that I go through these. I did the snowman enemy rough, that's done. Christmas stage, background, that's done. Christmas tree bumper, that's done. And the present bumper was done before that, so I'll just keep them in order. Now it's time to actually jump into the game and start adding game stuff. Let me take a drink of my Christmas water here to make sure my Christmas voice keeps going. And head on over to Game Maker Studio where I'm making the game. Project Spaghetti is the game. For those of you who haven't seen this before, I'll just take you on a quick tour of it so that you know what I'm kind of working with here. So it is a very retro-styled game. Like I said before, it is kind of modeled after the Commodore 64 palette because it's close to my heart. So you start out, you're a cowboy wandering around. You can duck. You can fire bullets at enemies who can duck the bullets as well. The more the bullet bounces around, gets dodged, everything else, the faster it gets, and the more points it's worth when it hits someone. You can also, well, when you lose a life, you lose your clothes. So one more hit and it's game over, but you can continue. This is the Halloween level, the graveyard level, the ghosts that I was using for the snowman base. Until you ring this bell, the bullets just go through them. And once the bell stops ringing, they go back to normal. But the drawback to ringing that bell is the fact that the bats start coming down, and the ghosts get mad at you and start to chase you. The next level that I did was in November, the desert level. With this one, there's these scorpions that are in here. If you shoot them from the front, they're always facing you. They get very upset and they chase you. The bones are just regular bumpers, but the cacti, if you hit them, they start spraying out deadly spines. And this is the fourth level, which was more of a November-December thing. Shielded aliens who fire out lasers that reflect off of crystal bumpers at 45-degree angles. So the goal of this is to get the aliens to hit themselves like that, take advantage of their shield being down, and kill them. So that is the game in a nutshell. What I need to do first is add all these sprites into Game Maker Studio. Just for those of you who've never used Game Maker Studio before or haven't seen it before, it's a really good program for making 2D games. Makes it really simple. Most of the stuff you can do through like this GUI editor, like for example objects, like the player. You know, when you create the player, do this stuff. When alarms go off, do this stuff. Most of it you can do visually, but you know, you do have to do some scripting in it to get things to behave the way you want them to. So it's not completely easy, but it's definitely a lot easier than, you know, trying to dive into something like Unity or Unreal Engine. And standard version I think is free. Professional version costs money, but as you can see here, there's a holiday sale. They put it on sale all the time, so if you're interested, you can always pick it up during a sale. But first thing I need to do is add a new enemy type for the snowman. And start adding sprites. Since the closest one's going to be Ghost, I'm going to duplicate that one as a base. I'm going to use abbreviations. So head, torso, base. And I need to grab that snowman. That's the full one. Yeah, okay, I'll use that for a start. I won't worry about collision and stuff like that until after seeing it kind of in the game. I'll keep it simple. So next is Sprites, Snowman. Just head and torso, I guess, is a good place to start. Head, torso. It's fine. Want to keep this origin the same so that it doesn't suddenly like warp around. I want to make sure that all the snowmen have the same sprite origin, which is where this little cross thing is pointing, because that determines where it's drawn on the screen. Head and base. Whoops, not TB. Head and base. Head, base. And sprite, snowman, torso base. So this one is TB. Still have unfortunate naming even after getting rid of the balls. Torso base. Okay. Now for the individual ones. Sprite, snowman, head. Just the head. Duplicate, sprite, snowman, torso. Torso right. Okay. And last up, sprite, snowman, head, torso, base. So base. Okay. And thinking about it, yeah, I should probably modify these collisions. At the very least, as long as I only make them smaller, it shouldn't cause problems. One problem you can run into if you make collisions bigger is something like this. Say you have a solid object here, and you decide maybe to merge your snowman or something. Your snowman's sitting down here, you merge it so that it ends up like this. Its collision is now passing into the other collision, it gets stuck, weird things happen. If you're in like a third person or first person game, I guess if you're in like a more of a 3D game, sometimes if you have havoc and collision and stuff like that, physics going on, the thing will just like sprawling somewhere off into the distance. That happens once in a while in games with collision problems. So you always have to be careful with collision. In this case, it's always getting smaller, so I should be okay. I just have to remember never to merge these guys back up again, or if I do, be very careful about how I do it. So let's go with automatic for now. Now, do need to shrink it down a little bit. Normally when you're making enemies, should probably sideline on that too. Normally when you're making enemies, if your enemy looks like this, you want to, say it's a game where you're able to shoot enemies, you usually want to give the player the benefit of the doubt when it comes to collision on enemies so that, you know, they have a little bit of an extra buffer. Obviously you wouldn't want to use a shape like this for a round enemy or whatever, but for an enemy you'd want to do something like this, because if the player thinks they hit the enemy but it doesn't, but the bullet just kind of whizzes through them or something, it's going to upset the player. Whereas if you're thinking about bullets coming at the player, you usually want to kind of fudge the collision to be a little bit smaller than the player looks, because in their minds they dodged that bullet that ended up hitting them. In this case, the snowman is also the thing that attacks the player, so probably just keeping the collision as close to the visuals as possible is the way to go. 7. It's not too bad. Let's do 6. 16. Bring the top down a little bit more. Well, no, that's fine. 7. 19. Now, yeah, let's not fiddle with the top and bottom ones. So for the ones that are too tall, I want to do 6, 16, 7, 20. Oh, that one's already 6, 16, 7, 20. 6, 16, 7, 20. Just make sure. Okay, those ones are fine. Let me just modify this one as well. 6, 16. Squeeze it in the same amount. Top 120. That's fine. Do the same thing with this one for the sides anyway. 6, 16. And the default looks okay for the top and bottom. $12.20. Just to keep them consistent. 616, 1220. Okay. So those are my sprites for that. I should probably bring in the Christmas tree and the bumper here. So let's copy over. Anyone's fine. Sprites, Xmas tree. It's not too bad. Let's shrink it in a little bit. Okay, that's good. And let's do sprite present. Probably don't want to worry about the ribbon. I just want to worry about the box itself. Okay, we'll go with that. So sprite present, Christmas tree. Last thing's going to be the background. So let's copy the night one. Let's call this BG Snow. Load that in. Width 344, height 240. There's a reason I have to worry about this. This width and height changed. I do need a little bit of a buffer here. What I'm doing is the camera shifts to the right a little bit to give this little bit of room to the enemies to be able to come in from off screen. So I do need to add 24 pixels to the left. So I need to edit in here. GameMaker does have, a sprite editor inside of it. So shift. Let's see if I can remember this. Wrong direction. I don't want to stretch. Resize. Okay. Let's do it from the right this time. .344 by 240. 344 by 240. Okay. And I need to turn the tiling off because I don't want this thing to repeat for any reason. And next thing is going to be to actually make that level. So let's copy over the night level, duplicate, call this room snow. Pretty much everything's okay. I just have to replace all of the things that are going on in here, so change it out to snow. Probably change some of these bumper placements. Right now this is just a grid. These red circles indicate where those bumpers go in, so like the presents and the Christmas trees will go in wherever these red ones are. Blue ones indicate where power-ups show up. The pink triangles indicate where enemies can move. So the map is basically a combination of that stuff. Let's move these around a little bit. If I'm going to have a tree, I kind of want it in the middle, so let's put it there. Presents can be off to the sides a little bit. Let's do kind of a present in the corner there. And just so they don't get too close to the edge of the screen, let's bring them in a little bit. Okay, I think that gives me a start. So I've got room snow. Now I need to add this to the game so that it knows to go to room snow. That's going to take some scripts. Let's see, where do I have all that stuff? There's my level list, so I do need to squeeze the snow level into here. And go 6, 7, 8, expand that out a bit. Now I have 8 levels, so I need to worry about background music for 8 levels. Okay, and I know one other place that's going to worry about all this is the bumper spawn array and enemy spawn array, which is in charge of replacing those little like circles with the appropriate objects. So this needs to get changed because level 5 is the snow level. Let's see, presents, Christmas tree, present. I think I only had 3, so let's keep it at that. And let's move all these up. Just have to remember to make these objects later. So present and Christmas tree, Xmas tree. And have to do the same thing for the enemies, which I spawn in, which will eventually be snowmen. Let's copy that over. Before I forget, change this to level 6, level 7, and the default, so this needs to be a snowman. Let's get one in there right away. Well, no, so let's do that. Since the enemy is going to be a little tricky for the player, I probably want to space them out more than I do other enemies. So let's do that. Give the player a little breathing room until they get up to maybe here. I probably don't need that many of them. Okay, so that should handle that stuff. Is there anything else I have to worry about? Pickup spawn. That's fine. Yeah, I guess I'll find out when I start the game and get a bunch of errors, right? Easiest way to figure it out. So next thing is going to be, well, the bumpers are going to be easiest, so let's do that first. So I'm going to duplicate the tombstone bumper and call this the present. And I'm going to use the present sprite so that it looks like a present instead of a tombstone. Little did players know what's inside. Everything's going to act the exact same as the tombstone, which is to say it just acts as a normal bumper. It doesn't do anything special when you hit it. The tree, for now, I think I'm going to copy the cactus. Let's call this tree level. Just replace cactus with tree, basically. Don't really need to do that, because it'll still work if I call it a cactus, but make sure I remember that. And like for the cactus, this script is what handles when the bullet hits the cactus, spraying out all those spines everywhere. So I need tree cooldown and tree fire delay. I'll keep it the exact same as the cactus for now. Okay. And the reason I'm replacing these manually is just so that I know exactly what I'm doing here. The actual object can still be called just a cactus bullet object, because the actual object being fired out is going to be the same kind of bullet that gets fired out from a cactus. So that's one of the reasons I didn't want to do a search and replace, because otherwise I'd have to create this extra object that behaves like a Christmas tree object when it's just the cactus object. Kind of a waste. Good thing there's only 2 levels to the cactus, whether it fires out in horizontal and vertical directions or diagonal directions. That's the only thing that changes with the level for now. Even so, there's a lot of these to replace. Okay, I think I got them all. Let me just check my cacti. Should change the comments. That's fine. Cactus bullet is the only cactus that should be left. Okay, good. So now I've got my dangerous Christmas tree in place. This is that cactus bullet, by the way. The object. So next up is to actually make the enemy. The closest thing is probably going to be the ghost. Let's see, what is going to be the closest thing? Actually, the scorpion might be pretty close too. But the behavior changing from wandering around to chasing the player is closer to the ghost, so I think I'm going to be better served if I copy the ghost for now as a base. And the snowman will always start off with 3 parts. So the snowman starts out hunting the player. So I don't want to use EM angry, I just want to use EM hunt as true. EM calm is true. Probably don't need to be using that, but we'll see. And one of the things that's going to make this snowman different is its state. So by default, let's see. Let's go with constants on this. Because otherwise I'm going to have to remember what 0 means, what 1 means, you know. What this state is going to be is, you know, one state is going to be where it's got all 3 of its balls. Another state's where it's only got 2. It's only got like the head and the base. Another state's going to be if it has the torso and the base, you know, that, you know, those 7 different variations are all going to be a different state. But I don't want to remember that 2 is this one and 3 is that one, so that's where I'm going to be able to use these constants. Head, torso, base. Let's make that 1. Let's make head, torso 2. Head, base 3. Torso, base 4. And just head alone will be 5. Torso alone will be 6. Base alone will be 7. So this way I can always use these names, which make more sense to me than numbers. Now I never have to think about 1s and 2s and 3s and 6s and 7s. Just have to remember what I called these things. Didn't use state, so there we go. Okay, so it starts off with 3. If dodging stop movement, the snowman is never going to dodge, so it's never going to stop moving. It will stop moving if it's hurt. So let's change that to EM hurts true. Kind of like the scorpion. That's why I was kind of on the fence of whether to copy the scorpion or the ghost. Because the scorpion has a hurt state. So if it's not hurt, then calculate the movement. And we've got EM angry here. EM hunt is the new thing. So if EM hunt is true, hunt the player. The snowman is hunting the player for the player. So it wants to find the player optimally. EM speed. This is something that I was doing with the ghosts where I'd speed them up if they were angry. This resets them back down to the normal speed. Later on I do need to do something with the speed for the ghosts. Not the ghosts, the snowmen. So let's not worry about that for now, I guess. It's calm. And all that stuff should be okay. This, let's see, EM speed should be based on 3 levels of speed, like I said at the beginning of the show. If there's the 3-ball version, it goes slow. If there's the 2-ball version, it goes faster. If there's a 1-ball version, it goes the fastest. So there's 3 speed levels depending on its state. So let's do a switch statement. EM snowman state case snowman head torso base. EM speed is just going to be EM base speed. So use the basic speed if it's got all its parts. If it's only got 2 parts, head base and EM speed equals EM base speed times snowman medium speed. And I do need to define that. Let's say it goes twice as fast. So I don't need that anymore. I do need a break though. Last is with just the head, the torso, or the base. It moves really fast. I should never hit this default case, but just in case, I'll throw it in there. Okay, so I do need to add snowman fast speed as well. Let's make that 3. It's one of those things I'm just going to have to see when it goes into the game, what it seems like. So that's that. And I should probably just do this speed calculation outside. Because it doesn't really depend on whether the snowman is chasing the player or not. The speed stays the same. I do like to line my parentheses up so that I can debug things later. So I should never be resetting speed anywhere. So adjust the speed of the snowman depending on its state. So speed should always depend on its state. And EM hunt is true if it's hunting the player, then it's going to depend on the state. What I could do is in step decide whether EM hunt is true, but I could just do that check when it gets hit by a bullet. So for now I'll leave it. If it runs into a bumper or another enemy, then stop, that's fine. Direction's fine. Haven't drawn any of the other sprites, so that doesn't make a difference. Unlike the the ghost, there's no bell, but the difference is now that it has a state, that would probably be a good place to do that. But I can just get rid of all that, actually, because I only need to check what state it's in and whether it needs to speed up, slow down, start chasing the player, stop chasing the player when it gets hit by a bullet, because that's the only time it's going to change from, 3 balls to 2, for example. There's no angry state. The snowman can always get hit, so I'm not going to worry about that. So there's no dodge state. But the thing I do need to check is what its state is. This would probably be better inside of script. Well, yeah, this is going to be one of those things that's just going to be better to write as a script, isn't it? Yeah, snowman state that. Just trying to think whether it's worth having another variable that keeps track of how many balls it has, whether it has 3, 2, or 1. Let's go ahead and do it, I guess. Three. So if it gets hit by a bullet, first thing to do is to check that. If it's only got 1 ball left, then destroy it. Otherwise, figure out what to do with it. So if it's 3, then come in here and do this stuff. If it's 2, come in here and do this stuff. And 1 is handled in the uppercase, so I don't need to worry about that. Just to make sure I don't do 2 at the same time, let's do that. And of course, let's comment. So okay. So if it has 3 balls, I'm going to have to figure out where the bullet is hitting to decide which of those balls to get rid of. The thing I can say is that well, let's just do this, 2. The thing I can say with certainty is that if a bullet does hit it, it's going to lose 1 of its balls, so that's the first thing to do. It's a good start. If it hits the player, then do exactly like the ghost does and just kind of disintegrate but cause damage to the player. That's fine. I don't have to worry about the angry state. What do I have to worry about? I only have to worry about the snowman state. So snowman state equals snowman head, torso, body. Then do something like that. Okay, I think I have enough brackets in here. Yeah. So in this case, I don't need to worry about much. If it's up, for now, since I don't have that many sprites, if it's up, right, down, it should probably face right. So sprite, snowman, HTTP. And it's the exact same sprite, but it's going to face left if it's facing left. So for the cases where the direction is left, I want to do that. So what the ImageX scale does is if it's 1, it stays the same. If it's -1, it reverses it. So my snowman that's facing this way, if a -1 is applied to it, it'll face this way. And that's all I need to do for that. Yeah, wow, would I really want to do multiple switches inside of switches? Because there's 7 snowman states. Yeah, it's just going to be unreadable, so I'd prefer to do it this way. It's probably going to be more my style to do it this way. Okay. Otherwise, if it just has a head and a torso, mostly the same. Mostly the same, except this changes. And if this was all I was doing, there's an easier way to do this, but in the future I might add animation and things like that. So I'm separating it out now in advance. And the last one with the 2 is torso and base. Okay. Now we're down to just head. Easy enough. Torso, So what this will do is it'll come in here when it's trying to draw the snowman and figure out which snowman to draw, which of those sprites to draw. If it's got all three parts, it's going to draw the head, the torso, and the base version, etc. It's going to pick the right one based on the state, as long as I can get that state right. But that's going to depend on the bullet and where the bullet hits. So let's see. I guess that should get me started. Just want to get it up to the very basic, not quite working the way I want it to, but just enough where I can get into the level, see the snowman wandering about, trying to attack the player, etc. That should be enough for me. You know what? I could save myself just a little bit of a step here by saying that. And so if it runs out of snowballs, it's dead. If it had 3 balls, then I don't need to do these things here. If it had 2 balls, save me just a little bit there. So EM hurts true. So one thing I am going to want to do is if it gets hit by a bullet, I want it to be hurt for a little bit. So let's set EM hurt to true. If it's not going to die, then it's going to get hurt. Just so that it gives a little bit of a pause for the player to run away if they have to. And if I do that, I need to do an alarm. Let's see. Let's use alarm 3. EM dodge to false. Yeah, if I'm not using EM dodge, I can use that alarm. I don't think I'm using dodge. EM dodge. No. Okay, I'm fine. So let's make my alarm 3 my no longer hurt alarm. So when this alarm is called, it means the snowman is no longer hurt, which means I can turn this back to false, which means it can start moving again. Get the right comment in there. So if it's not hurt, calculate the move. Let's see. Which means I do need to have that alarm in here. So let's keep it stuck in place for about a second. So that's my number of seconds to get the proper thing, which means frames, the number of frames to call this alarm, and I have to multiply this by something called room speed. And the alarm I want is number 3. So the snowman's going to be hurt until 1 times the room speed number of frames passes and alarm 3 gets called. Let's see, the last thing I need to do is to check the bullet for where it hit the snowman, which is going to kind of depend on what it looks like. Probably. Because if I did my job right, it would just be a third, a third, a third. But I don't think that's quite the case. So let's see. If the center is 12, 10, so the center of the sprite is here. If I hit it, let's see, x minus, or y minus 1, 2, 3, 4. If the collision happens anywhere in this y minus 4 range, then that's probably what I want. So to kind of draw this out. Okay. So y minus 4 is kind of this line here. And going back to 12, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 4. So y plus 4 is my line here, which means when the collision hits, I only have to look at y because x isn't going to matter. If y is basically this, if the collision hit here, so if other dot y is less than y minus 4, then take off the head. If other dot y is greater than y plus 4, remove base. Love my writing skills with a mouse, huh? Otherwise, take off the middle. Let's see if that logic works for me. If I change the center, I'm going to have to worry about that, so let's be careful. But that's only for the 3 snowball version, so I'm going to have to do that math again for the 2 snowball version. One step at a time. That's the only way to go. Okay. So if, let's see, other, well, it should be fine. If other y is less than y minus 4, what that means is snowman state is now going to be snowman torso and base. Else, this is why I hate doing this stuff visually, because the ifs and elses inside of GameMaker's visual thing kind of scrunch all the way to the right, and it looks like I'm trying to debug like a Perl script or a PHP script or something. Not a fan of it. Prefer doing it in the scripting where I can kind of determine my own left-right stuff, but it should be okay. There's not that many states to check. So if other.y is greater than y plus 4, take off the base, which means there's just a head and a torso left. And if it's neither of those cases, then we take off the middle, which means there's a head and a base left. Now I got to do it for the 2-ball version, which means heading back up here. Another good reason to keep the collision consistent. I don't like where the center is. Let me see if I can fix that. No, I guess that's fine. Alright, that's fine. We'll deal with it. If it looks weird in game, I might have to fix that. But 1210 is here. 1, 2, 3. Well, I guess the same rules kind of apply. If it's +4, no. If it's greater than +4, it takes off the base. And the same with the other ones too. Let's see. So, what do I have to do in here? Maybe I should just do the script in this one. Otherwise I'm going to have too many ifs and elses and stuff, so I'm just going to do a script. So if it's only got the head and the torso, if other.y is greater than, because y is going down, y +4, then the snowman state is going to be just the head, because the base got whipped off. Otherwise, snowman state is going to be just the torso. Break. Yeah, see, this is much visually clearer than doing all these like ifs and elses out in the visual thing. That's why I say with like Game Maker, it is easy to do everything visually, but in some ways it's just clearer to do things through scripting. Kind of the same situation. If the base gets whipped off, it's just the head again. That's the same. Otherwise, it's just the base. Break out of that case. And the last case is the torso on the base. Just copy this, since it's pretty much the same thing. If it whips off the base, the torso is the only thing that's left. Okay, that should have me covered. That looks a lot clearer than what's up here. Okay. Let's see, do I have everything I need to have for this to actually start working? Hurt, false, calm, true. Am I using calm? Calm is false, calm is true. I don't think I'm even using calm, so let's just get rid of it. If I don't need it, I don't need it. So it's hunting for the player. That's one thing I do have to do in here, actually. if it loses the head, then it's no longer hunting for the player. So I need to be careful of that. So take off the head means em hunt is false. Because it's missing its head, it doesn't know where the player is, it's just going to wander around. So I need to do that down here too. So if it gets to a state where it's missing its head, then hunt should be false. Well, this should already be false, but just to be on the safe side. Because if it's only got a torso and a base, it's missing its head, obviously. Now I think that may be all I need to do. When am I readjusting the speed? Am I doing that in here? I could probably do that outside. So at the very end of this else, I could do that there. Okay, so switch the speed when it changes, based on its state. Let's make sure I've got all my brackets lined up here. That goes to that, that goes to that. That's the start of the else. If, finishes that if, starts that else, there's that if, that else, an else there, an else there. That lines up with that if there. So if it had 3 balls, else it has 2 balls. That's that if. That's the else that goes with that else. And that's the else that goes with the if it's not dead else. So I should have the right number of brackets, but we'll find out. Let's see. Let's see what happens. I'm sure I'll have some errors because I added so much to the game. Action number 10, line 11. Something bad. My favorite error from GameMaker. That usually means I forgot a parentheses or something somewhere. So draw event action 10, line number 11. Okay, I think it's that. I think I just had one too many brackets in there. Left over from the ghost stuff. It'd be nice if that's all that was going wrong with it. We'll find out. Game loaded. That's a good sign. I have no idea what's going to happen when I get to level 5. First off, I need to move that bumper so the player doesn't start there. Do have the snowman coming after the player. That's a good start. What happens when I shoot it? It does shrink. It does go faster. It does swap left and right when it's coming after the player. I just shot off its head. And EM calm. Let's see. Step event 0. Object snowman. Okay, so I'm still using calm somewhere. I need to get rid of that. Not bad, not bad. Was not expecting it to work as well as it did after so many additions without even seeing it working in game. Kind of dangerous to do that much changing without checking it. Usually you want to go in little chunks and bits and pieces so that you can make sure one thing's working before going on to the next thing. So I do need to check for Ian Coleman here. Okay. Or if they're just calming down. Well, I don't think they're going to... Hunt is true. Try to reach the player. No, I don't think I need it. Let's just get rid of that. Because before with the ghost, it would recalculate when it calmed down again. It would have to find another move node rather than the player. The snowman doesn't work that way. Let me do that real quick. Let me get rid of that present. Let's move that out of the way a little bit. Okay. And I didn't look, but I think one of those should be a tree. Yes, okay. One of them is a tree. So the snowman is making a beeline for me. Let's see if I take off its head, what happens. Yep. When I take off the snowman's head, it just starts kind of randomly running around. As opposed to if I leave the head, it still comes after the player. But you can see, if you're not careful about how you're shooting, you're going to get yourself into kind of a jam here. Because you're going to have a bunch of angry snowmen coming after you. And especially if your goal is to get a bunch of points, it's going to be really hard to get a good like bounce, build up, or charge on your gun if you've got snowmen chasing you. You'll have to kind of lead them into bullets for that stuff to work. Grab my bullet. Okay. So now I'm in trouble. One thing I am noticing that I do need to fix is that the player should be taking damage from the snowman, but it's not, and the reason is because I never updated the player to tell the player how to deal with snowmen. So let's do that, and I think if I get that done, that's actually the Christmas stage. Went fairly smoothly there. Let's see. So, for example, you know, when the ghost hits the player, this is what happens. So it's pretty much going to be the exact same case as what happens when the ghost hits the player. So I should probably just copy all this over. If the player dodges false, I don't want that to be the case, do I? Because if they're dodging and the ghost hits the player or the snowman hits the player, it should still hurt the player. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to have the player being able to like dodge and just let the enemy run into them and disappear and stuff like that. So now the snowman should cause damage. Let's move that up to the top of the screen just to make sure you guys can see it. Jump to level 5. Okay, so now I've taken off his head, so now he's just randomly wandering around the map. Charge up my bullet. Fire. He unfortunately still has his head, so he's going to start tracking me, but I can get rid of it. So there's definitely an advantage to getting headshots, much like a first-person shooter, I guess. So definitely makes the Snowmen a very different kind of enemy to any of the other ones in the game. And there's one other thing I do have to check, if I can get another bullet without dying. Oh, well, there we go. Well, now that I have a full clip, let's see what happens when I hit the Christmas tree. Yep, behaves just like the cactus did. If you hit the Christmas tree, it fires off bullets. The one thing I do want to do with that is to keep it a little festive. What should I do? It's the exact same object as the cactus bullet, so I should probably not make another object. What I'm thinking is, rather than having this green thing fire out, it should be like, you know, the ornament shards or something firing out, which means a different color. One thing I do have to add in here is something for the snowman. It's not so much the cactus. Enemy. This is fine. Oh, well, alright, I have it handling enemies, so I don't need to make a special case for the snowman. The reason I have special cases for scorpions and ghosts is because scorpions have the block state, ghosts have, you know, that translucent state where things go through them. But since all enemy objects inherit from enemy, if I don't put snowman in here, it'll just inherit this behavior anyway. So the only thing I do want to do is add a variable SPR variety. Let's make SPR variety cactus bullet by default. Let's see. So, what should I do here? Step events. Create events. Just trying to think what's the easiest way to change this thing's color without coming up with a bunch of extra scripting. Let's see. Draw. I guess I just have to do it in draw. I do have to do scripting. Okay. So let's go over to player and just see an example. So sprite index. So I need to change the sprite index based on the variable. So if variety, well, I can just do this. Easy enough. Okay. So here, by default, sprite variety is set to cactus bullet, so when I hit the cactus, it'll just show SPR cactus bullet, that sprite cactus bullet. But if I change this, then I can make it draw something else. Right. So the only thing I'm going to need to do is add a bullet. I don't know why I have two of these. Let's get rid of this. Duplicate the cactus bullet, call it tree bullet. Edit the sprite. And let's get back to my Commodore palette so I know what color I need to use. 190, 53, 53. So red 190, green 53, blue 53. For that distinct Commodore red. 190, 53, 53. If I can remember that. Where does it allow me to change the color? I could, oh, there we go. So 190, 190, 53, 53. That gets me the red I need. And let's see. Need something that's going to stand out against the red snow. Because the tree itself is not actually standing out that well, so it's going to need some fixing in the future. Brown may not be too bad, but maybe a gray would work. Let's go with this dark gray. And that is 91, 91, 91. So 91, 91, 91. That's the gray I need. Just noticing that I have all this extra border around here, which I don't need. Let's spread out that cactus bullet a little bit too. Okay. So now I've got SPR tree bullet, and when I come down here to cactus bullet, as long as I set SPR variety to SPR tree bullet, let's see, BL SPR variety. Then I should be golden. Let me check the tree. Spray spines out. And I just need to add tree bullet instance. Sprite variety is equal to sprite tree bullet. I just need to add that to all these cases where it's making bullets. These are the horizontal and vertical directions. These are the diagonals. Okay. Let's see if that works. If it does, I'm in very good shape. Move this up. Okay. Let's see what happens to the Christmas tree. Yep. Great. It's firing out red ornamental shards in all directions, causing all sorts of chaos because it's knocking the snowman senseless, you know, hitting him in different places, everything else. That's one problem with using this color for the background. It's the same as the main character. Let's fix that. That is not going to be good, so I do need to fix that. The easiest way to fix that's just going to be to go over here. And I guess I do just have to go with this background, don't I? Yeah, if I'm going to have a blue Tengu for a cowboy, I just have to kind of settle for a different color, don't I? Not sure I have two of these open. Let's get rid of that one before it causes trouble. And edit this. So 344. I have to remember to shift it over. Oops. That way. Okay. Good thing I let my character get hit. Let's see how this looks. Okay. The other bonus is that the Christmas tree stands out a lot better too. Yeah. Okay, this color's fine. The character stands out. Christmas tree stands out. Presents, simple as they are, they stand out. Awesome. So there we go. Went from, let's go to the task list, added, bring done over here. So, started out with the graphics, started out with the plan, which was just filling up this task list, went to the graphics, which was making a snowman enemy, Christmas stage background, present bumper, tree bumper, and then I added all those objects into GameMaker, so I added the bumpers first, I think, because they were easy. Added the Christmas stage, add. Basically added the stage. That was just a game design task. Added the tree, added the present, added the snowman, did the AI branching after doing the state update stuff to tell whether it's got 2 balls, if it's got 3 balls, etc. And determined where the bullet hits. So basically, through this Christmas special, managed to get a Christmas stage going. Merry Christmas. So let's get a little more Christmassy here. Boom. There we go. Thank you for watching this Christmas special. I'll have to think about how to edit it, because I don't want to force you guys to sit here when you should be opening presents, eating hams and turkeys and vegetarian dinners, I guess, if that's your thing, to celebrate Christmas. It should be nice and quick, just something you can watch while you're waiting for something to cook, maybe, in the background. So I'll think about how to edit it, maybe skip over a couple of spots, maybe fast forward some spots, maybe release the whole thing as is, who knows. But hope you guys enjoyed this. It's definitely different not doing it live. I miss you guys, because keep having you guys around in the chat definitely makes this go a lot faster. It's a lot more fun too, and even if it's in the morning when my brain's not working, the bad thing about night is my brain starts to stop working, as you've probably noticed, but I hope it worked out. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas, and I hope to see you, well, Saturday or next time there's an episode. Definitely hope to do something there. Have a Merry Christmas. Good night.